On today's episode, a short scale guitar to go with my short fingers and my even more short attention span. Ooh, look, Seinfeld's on TV. What's up, nerds? I found this guy at a pawn shop. Now, while I mostly go to thrift stores, every once in a while I'll pop into the pawn shop just to see what they have. Many years ago, pawn shops used to be a treasure trove of really inexpensive instruments and tools and things like that. As long as you didn't care how they got there, it's kind of a gray area, but you used to be able to get really good musical gear and power tools at a decent price. But with the advent of Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, a lot of people just resorted to selling the good stuff there to where they can get the most money for it. Pawn shops nowadays, they're just for people who are looking to get quick cash for something they, I don't know, might have had lying around. I'm using little air quotes right there, but you all know what I mean. Now they're flooded with nothing but first act guitars, lower tier TV sets like TCL and Hisense, and just really awful battery operated tools that you get off of Temu and Wish.com. It's just awful. This one kind of stood out. Not only was it a nice, tiny, short scale guitar with 24 frets, the price was right, $40. It had been sitting there for a few months, so the price drops every once in a while at this pawn shop. They have a schedule every few months. They knock off $20, $30. So I saw this and I did some little checking out on the phone to see how good they were. And surprisingly, the reviews were actually good. This is a Laguna brand, which is Guitar Center's in-house brand. They're made in China and just rebadged Laguna because it sounds, I don't know, not exotic, but adventuresome, I guess. Whatever. But almost every review of this little guitar said it punches way above its weight class. For the price, it's made out of, it's made out of basswood. It's a decent wood. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. It's not like it's one of these laminated plywood guitars like the old Harmonies or something like that. The neck, they say, is really good, and the pickups are nice and hot, which I kind of like, but you can always dial those back if you have the right electronics. And that's where this Achilles heel for this guitar is. They said the electronics are garbage. Really, really cheap potentiometers for volume control. And the tuners, they said, if I can get this down here, get this in the shot. The tuners, while they said they're decent, they could always be upgraded. Also, it's the proudly made in China sticker. We're just going to pretend we didn't see that. We can just look at that. It's, oh, who knows where it's made? I don't know. Is it China? No, wherever. And I think I might, kind of scrub that off. It's just a rebadge anyway. But I plugged it in at the shop to try it, the pawn shop to try it out, and it had a little hum, but it worked. I figured for $40, I have enough spare parts around that, we can see what we can do. I'm not a guitar player by any means. I mean, I just know a few chords. I play keyboards predominantly, but I like this guitar because I have weird hands. My palms are big, but my fingers are relatively short for the size of the palm, like little Vienna sausage fingers. It really isn't ideal for keyboards, but it's even less ideal for guitars. So a short scale guitar really, really felt good in my hands. That's pretty much the main reason I got it. And it's something I could bring on the road when I go out of town for work or something like that. I could actually try and practice. And who knows, maybe learn how to play Sweet Child of Mine and annoy all my friends with it. So there you go. So we're going to crack open the back of this and see what the electronics look like, since this is predominantly electronics repair channel. So let's get to that. And here are the innards, and it's exactly what you'd expect from a base model budget electric guitar, just really small, inexpensive, cheap potentiometers for the tone and the volume, and a just basic three-way switch right there. I did notice that the ground wire for the bridge, and that just kind of came off the back of this tone potentiometer. So that's going to have to be rewired. Pretty much this whole thing, you know, needs to be upgraded. I might keep the switch, but definitely the potentiometers in there. The back cover actually looks like it's shielded. Of course, it could just be silver colored vinyl just to emulate the look of an attempt at making a little Faraday cage thing for it. But I have some copper tape left over from a previous project, and I'll give that a good coating as well as pretty much the whole cavity right there. So upgrading these potentiometers should make a little bit of difference. Um, I want to see exactly how hot those pickups are. So let me get my little meter out and kind of just take these off, and we'll see where we go from there. All right, we're going to ohm out these pickups. Usually the higher number they are, the hotter they're going to be. So let's see this guy here. That is 12.06 ohms. Let's see what we get on the other one. This one is 11.88 ohms. All right, well, it jumps up a little bit. I think I'm just hitting the crosswire there. 11.88 ohms. Okay, so the yellow wire is probably going to the neck because that's usually a little bit less hot than the bridge pickup. So those, they're not super, super hot, like 16 ohms, like really, really high output, but they're not low, not cheap little, things. So we might be good with these guys. I mean, from what I've read online, they said they're pretty solid. So I don't think I'm going to spend a couple $100 and drop in replacement pickups on a $40 guitar. So, what we have to do in here, I'm going to seal this guy up, and then we're going to check out the action on the bridge and, the fretboard, make sure we need to adjust the truss rod or not. And we'll just go from there. Well, the intonation and the string height was actually pretty good. The intonation was dead on. The only adjustment I had to make was I had to tighten the truss rod just a little bit. They had a little, sag right in the middle there. And to do that, just had to remove this plate, and there's a little adjustment screw right there, little hex head metric. Just give it a little turn, maybe about an eighth of a turn, and that took care of business. I didn't film that because I'm not a professional luthier, and there are much better videos on how to, set up your guitar online than I could ever do. I mean, I only know enough to cause damage, and I don't want you to ruin a neck by my dumb video. I'm more of the electronics guy, and I'll stick with that. That's more my wheelhouse. So this is set up. I can get rid of these strings because God knows how old they are, and I don't know, they're very, very light. They might be 8 gauge. Who knows what they put on this guy here? Also, the tuners are not very good, and that kind of keeps in line with the reviews I've read on this guitar. The electronics, and they said the tuners, they're not locking. I mean, you get what you pay for. But just sitting here, this thing has been going out of tune since I got it. I try and tune it. A few hours later, it's out of tune again. So I'm going to invest in some inexpensive tuners. Amazon has a brand I saw in there. It's like Music Lily, I think is the name of it. I've used them on a couple other projects, and for what the amount of money, I think they're like $20 for a set. They're really, really good. Stay in tune. I don't have a whammy bar on here. That's going to, do dive bombs. This thing's pretty much fixed, which I like. So yeah, that's new tuners and new electronics and copper tape shielding for the inside. All right, we just have to wait for everything to come in. Ooh, shiny. Got the new potentiometers in. wired them up. And when I went to install them, I noticed that the shafts were way too short. These are made for a pick guard, like on a Strat or something like that, not a solid body mount like a Les Paul or an SG or this guitar. So I ordered some long shaft potentiometers, but then they are way too long. I mean, the volume knob is going to cover a bit of this, but you still have a quarter inch or so of this shaft exposed. Fortunately, I think I can take the nuts that came with this guy and make a spacer out of it and kind of back it off a little bit. We have plenty of room back here to work with, so hopefully that'll work out fine. New potentiometers are in. I also replaced all the wiring in here with some better wire. Actually, the wire came from a Yamaha home organ that I had gotten a few years ago. It was non-functional. Somebody was getting ready to throw it out, and I wanted it just for the, I guess, Leslie type rotating speaker system it had inside. It's not a true Leslie. It's kind of a poor man's Leslie kind of thing. That's another project on another back burner that may or may not get finished. I've hit some roadblocks on it, but anyway, I gutted the wire harness on it, and I've been using that for scrap cable for years now. It was about, God, at least, I don't know how many dozens of yards of wire it had on it, but that was worth it alone to scrap it for that. So yeah, the wiring is out of a Yamaha organ. And yeah, did the tap test. The tuners didn't come in because post office, Amazon, when you get a package delivered by Amazon, you usually get it around the predicted time. When they ship it via the post office, it never comes in on time. It was supposed to be in today. Now it's sometime next week because of reasons. Who knows? Anyway, so what I had to do, I just did the little tap test where you plug it into the amplifier and use a little metal object and tap the humbuckers, and you can hear which ones are active and not. And it worked out fine. I mean, it's, not rocket science. You just have a three-way switch. I guess down here would actually be where the bridge connector would be. I mean, the neck connector would be. Middle is both, and then up here, because of the leverage, it's going to be your bridge pickup. So neck, both, bridge, and 3 connectors on the ground, and you're good to go. So that's it. Electronics are done. I'm going to button this guy up, and whenever the post office sees fit to deliver my locking tuners, we'll get some strings on there and we'll fire the sucker up. The new tuners finally came in. I guess whenever Amazon uses third-party sellers or whatever, and they use the post office, always expect the delivery date to be a week after what they say it really is. I mean, this pair here, when I was tracking it, it sat in a warehouse in New Orleans at the post office for at least 3 days before moving on for, reasons. Yeah. Also, I'm not too fond of this logo. I don't really want to sand this all down. I'm going to do the lazy approach and just cover it with this sheet of adhesive vinyl. I guess I'm going to hold it back a little bit. This is the stuff that they use in those Cricut machines to cut out little logos and stuff to throw on tumblers and whatnot. It's relatively cheap, and the finish is almost exactly the same. I mean, I know the light's hitting it. So what I'm going to do is just clean this off with a little IPA, not the rubbing alcohol, not the beer. And let this dry out a little bit. We're going to put this, cut out a little piece of it, stick it on there, and then use a little X-Acto knife to trim the sides and poke out the holes there. And yeah, that should be it. As you can see, the replacements line up exactly with the same mounting and screw holes as the originals. Since most of the guitars now are made in the same handful of factories in Asia, you know, they just make them all the same standard, fittings and routings and things like that. I mean, they go in, the morning shift makes Fenders, the midday shift will make Gibsons, the evening shift will make like Ibanez, and then from about 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., you get the Lagunas and the first acts and all the other things. This guy was probably made at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday, if I could find a precise date code. So, yeah, thank God for standardization. Henry Ford would be proud. She's all restrung and prettied up. Gonna pan on up so you can see the whole thing. It's hard to get a decent shot of the whole guitar. The headstock is nice and generic branded now. So let me show you what it sounds like. Well, the most notable improvement is the lack of any hum that you would get, from bad grounding or electromagnetic interference from like fluorescents or LED bulbs, which I have a bunch in my ceiling fan fixture and my vocal booth right over that way. But I turn it up and you hear just the ambient string noise, and it's going through my little 212 amp, and I've got some distortion on it. So what you're hearing is just the ambient string noise and maybe a little bit of the noise from the overdrive, but no hum, and that's a good thing. Pickups are all working, tones working, the volume, everything's nice and smooth. Um, both pickups right now, and then the bridge. And yeah, it's beautiful. It's amazing what a little shielding and rewiring can do. Um, this thing turned out really, really well, and that pretty much wraps it up for this video. The lesson or the takeaway here is don't just discount a brand of anything really, musical instruments, computers, whatever, just because the name is not familiar. Do a little research and you can find a hidden gem in there. And with, I don't know, came to about $40 worth of electronics added into a $30 pawn shop guitar, it's well worth it. I mean, if this thing was brand new, even if you did upgrade a brand new guitar, these things probably sold for like, I don't know, 150, maybe $200. With the additional $50 that you would put in electronics, you've got a really, really decent guitar. This thing's got tons of sustain too. If I just turn it on and let it go, yeah, it's just on its own. It's still going. Yeah, solid. The neck is good. It was set up good from the go. So um, at the factory, or maybe whoever owned this before I did got it professionally set up or something, because it required no adjustments whatsoever. Well, very little adjustments. Um, everything is good on this thing. I will throw down the links to all the equipment I use in upgrading this, the potentiometers, the locking tuners. Um, yeah, this thing is really, really nice. I just need to learn how to play it better, because I just know like chords, a little bit of chords, nothing fancy. I'm primarily a keyboard player. The guitar is just kind of a backup kind of thing, just to fart around with. So, hey, it's good to me. So, with that, I want to thank you guys for watching, sticking it out with these videos, and you guys take it easy.